Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mr. Watson and I'm a secondary school English teacher and private tutor based in Manchester. Being able to identify and analyse quotations in a text is a key skill that you will absolutely need to have if you're going to succeed in your English studies. That's why in this two-part tutorial, I am going to take you step by step through my process of finding a quotation, analysing and annotating that quotation, getting all my ideas together, and then turning those ideas into an analytical paragraph. This video is part one of that tutorial, and it's going to focus on unpicking a question so we know exactly what it is we're looking for, and then going through the extract, identifying some relevant quotations before then going through the process of analysing and annotating that quotation. So here we have an example question and extract, and this is what we're going to be working with today. So the first step for me would be to ignore the question and just read the extract. The reason for this is so that you actually get a good understanding of what's actually happening in the piece of writing. Let's read this extract together. In the dimly lit alleys of post-war London, shadows whispered secrets that no living soul ought to hear. The relentless drizzle painted the cobblestones with a silvery sheen, reflecting the fragile glow of a solitary gas lamp. Young Eliza, with hair as fiery as the tales of old and eyes that had seen too much for her tender age, rushed breathlessly down the twisting lanes. The weight of the ornate key around her neck, a relic from a past she dared not remember, felt heavier tonight, as though it held not just the memory of its lost lock, but the very fate of the city itself. Somewhere behind, footsteps echoed ominously, a metronome to her rising panic. So in terms of what we understand that this is taking place in post-war London, and that it's obviously quite an eerie location and an eerie atmosphere, and we've got the character here, Eliza, who is quite young and who is rushing for some reason, as if she's running away from something, indicated by the footsteps that are following her. That's what we've gotten from our first reading, our basic comprehension. So then step two would be to look at the question and to identify the key words. So the question here is, how does the writer use language to evoke a sense of tension and atmosphere in the extract? So the keywords here are language, and I would always recommend that if you've got the question in front of you that you underline or highlight these keywords so that you can easily refer to them again. To evoke a sense of tension and atmosphere in the extract. So that's step two. So now step three is to read through the extract with these keywords in mind and highlight any phrases or sentences or even words that match what we're looking for. In this case, that create a sense of tension and atmosphere. Here is definitely a quotation that I think evokes a sense of tension and atmosphere. Shadows whispered secrets that no living soul ought to hear. Again, I would say reflecting the fragile glow of a solitary gas lamp. That is an interesting quotation as well, and again it builds up that sense of atmosphere. Young Eliza, with hair as fiery as the tales of old and eyes that had seen too much for her tender age, rushed breathlessly down the twisting lanes. Now, that first section, I wouldn't necessarily go for that because it's more focusing on Eliza. However, this bit at the end, rushed breathlessly down the twisting lanes, that suggests that there's tension there. She's rushing for some reason. She's in a hurry, okay? She isn't calm and relaxed. So that does create an element of tension. And this last line here is really interesting because this is what is telling us that actually Eliza might be in danger, and that ramps up the tension and the atmosphere. So we've got a number of quotations here that we could annotate in more detail, or as I usually refer to it as, explode. We explode the quotation, okay? We pull it apart and analyze it and scrutinize it in detail. And that is what brings us to step 4, which is exploding the quotation. Now, when we're exploding a quotation, this is when we look at the technical side of things, as well as the effect that it has on us. And this is where the reader response comes in, and this is where you get a lot of the marks. So you've picked a relevant quotation that answers the question, but now you need to pull that quotation apart and explain why it's interesting. Why does it answer the question? How does it, in this case, build a sense of tension and atmosphere? Not only that, but we're looking specifically at language. So we're looking for language devices such as similes, metaphors, imagery, personification, as well as powerful adjectives, powerful verbs, etc. Now, as I've said, we have got quite a few quotations here. Now, you don't need to use all of them. It depends on what kind of response you're writing. So for example, if you're writing like a 20-mark answer, the chances are you're probably going to want to pick 3 or 4 of these quotations to explode. But if you're just doing a really short, maybe like a PE paragraph or something, you only really want to pick 1. So I would always start with the quotations that you are drawn to the most, the ones that you can unpack most confidently. So, since it's the first one we found, let's take shadows whispered secrets that no living soul ought to hear, and let's explode this quotation. Okay, so what I would do is I would then write that quotation out with a lot of space around it. And this is where the explosion comes in, the quote explosion. How does this specific quote show tension and atmosphere, or create tension and atmosphere? First of all, I am quite interested in this. Shadows whispered secrets. So the fact that the writer has the shadows doing something here that only humans do is, of course, personification. So what I would do is I've highlighted that section of the quotation, and so I'm going to just draw a line off it here, and I'm just going to write what that technique is. That's not all. Okay, because if we just went through and said, yep, that's personification, that's a metaphor, that's a simile, that's a powerful adjective, then all we're doing there is what we call feature spotting. And it is a mistake a lot of students make. You identify it, but then you stop. So there's no analysis there. We need to take it further. We've identified here that yes, there is personification, but now we need to go further and explain how does this personification create a sense of tension and atmosphere. So we'll expand this. And now we're going to say, right, okay, well, the fact that the shadows are whispering, something that isn't alive is actually talking, creates a sense of unease. Why? Because shadows don't talk. Unease is, of course, an emotion, it's a feeling, and that is the effect on the reader. That's the effect that is created. Now, it also has us asking questions, so if I just put that as a bullet point there, and here's a second point, it also has us asking, are the shadows actually whispering? Or is there whispering going on in the shadows, as in people hiding and up to no good? So we also have that sense, potentially, of, is Eliza being watched? We're asking that question because we don't know, but the writer's choice of language here makes us think about these things, makes us ask these questions. So already, this unease here and the fact that somebody might be being watched, both of these are dealing with tension and atmosphere. And the way we've done this, if you remember, is we've got 1, which is actually the technique, and then we've got 2, which is the effect. Let's move on to the second part of the quotation. I'm just going to use a different colour this time just to make it separate from the other one. And we're just going to say, no living soul ought to hear. So using the same approach as before, technique first and then the effect, let's see what we can unpick here. Now I'm quite interested here in the noun phrase living soul. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go this way this time, and I'm going to say, right, number 1, the technique here, it is a noun phrase. What is the effect of this noun phrase? Well, living soul makes you think, okay, well, maybe death is involved. How is death relevant here? And the fact that we start talking about death, again, creates this sense of tension, and it builds that dark, eerie, uncomfortable atmosphere. And of course, we've got soul as well, the noun soul, which could link to things such as potentially religion, maybe, or a sense of the afterlife. And now what we can do is if we take a small step back and we put this noun phrase in the context of the whole phrase that we've highlighted here, we can add some context to it and delve a little bit deeper. So the fact that it is no living soul ought to hear, well, that's interesting. Let me bring my arrow down here. So this suggests that only those who are dead should hear these secrets, or should be allowed to hear these secrets. And then again, going another layer deeper, that tells us that the secrets themselves are potentially dangerous, life-threatening, potentially even mystical or magical. Because we don't have enough information yet to rule out that in this story and in this world, in this universe, potentially those things that are dead might come back to life, might be reanimated somehow, when we're talking about things like zombies and demons and things. So again, we're asking those questions. So this is how I would teach and how I would encourage you to start your annotations. Now this is quite a basic annotation. We can obviously go a little bit deeper. So for example, with the first bit here, whispered is a verb. That's the technique. And the effect of this verb is this idea of secrecy, not wanting to be heard. And if you don't want people to hear what you're saying, then that suggests potentially that it's devious, evil perhaps. Okay? So obviously you can go into as much detail as you'd like, but for the purposes of this video, I think that will do us just fine. So that is how I would go about annotating a quotation. So let's remind ourselves of the steps. Step 1 is to read the extract for understanding. Step 2 is to then read the question and identify the keywords and focus. Step 3 is then to read back through the extract and identify quotations that you think matches the focus of the question. Step 4 is then to explode the quotation in as much detail as possible, making sure that you're identifying the writer's methods, so techniques, and the effect that it has on us as readers. And then once you've completed step 4, you would then move on to step 5, which is when you actually take your annotations and take your ideas and turn them into an analytical paragraph, whether that's a PE paragraph or a read and response paragraph or another type of analytical paragraph. And that is something that I'll be covering in the second part of this tutorial, which I'll be uploading next week. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to make sure that you're notified when that video goes on next week. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and why not share the video with a friend who you think might benefit from seeing this step-by-step tutorial. When I upload part 2 of this tutorial, I'll make sure to put a link to it here so that you can easily access it. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.